This is Screen Test, and we're going to the Oscars, breaking down every major nomination at this year's Academy Awards. I'm Jackson Floyd.
And I'm David Lynch, and in this video, we are breaking down the Best Director category. The nominees this year are Sam Mendes for 1917, Quentin Tarantino for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Bong Joon-ho for Parasite, Todd Phillips for Joker, and Martin Scorsese for The Irishman. So, I think, Jackson, that starting off in this category, the first thing we have to talk about is that another Best Director field this year at the Oscars, another group of five dudes. It's not really what you want, especially if you look at it from the perspective of viewing the Oscars through kind of a cultural/historic context for what the industry is kind of leaning towards and just their attitudes in that year. And considering also that 2019 was a breakthrough year, record year for as far as female filmmakers, helming big projects, to see that culminate in another Best Director field, of five guys and five male filmmakers. It's not really what you want to see.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, you look at the list of directors here: Sam Mendes, Quentin Tarantino, Bong Joon-ho, Martin Scorsese. A lot of these guys, I mean, you can say all of these men are very well deserved of the nomination.
Sure.
Some of these guys are legends. If you talk about Tarantino and Scorsese, Bong Joon-ho, we agree. I think that he directed a masterpiece this year.
Sure, yeah.
And Sam Mendes is getting high praise for 1917. Highly visual, highly stylized, outside the box kind of war film here.
And he's been here before.
And he's been
with
here
American
before.
Beauty.
Exactly. But that being said, Greta Gerwig directed a masterpiece, a masterpiece of adaptation in Little Women. Lulu Wang with The Farewell was a surprise breakout directorial debut, not a debut, but directorial role here for you. And then
It was her debut, yeah.
Cool.
One of my favorite movies of the year, too.
It was great. And then Lorraine Scafaria, yeah. I mean, three just women who may have deserted. There's plenty more out there. Maybe Todd Phillips doesn't fit in here. If you do want to nominate Greta Gerwig,
Sure.
that's the name I think you would substitute there. But again, I think it's something that the Academy needs to kind of progress on. Nominate more women for this award here.
It's just a sign that is far, even though diversifying the industry and the diversity in the Academy's voting body has been a big initiative in recent years, and they've added younger members, more diverse members, more females. It still has a ways to go, and it still has a ways to go in showing up in the actual nominees too. So.
Yeah, and something else that stands out about the Best Director field, this fast fact here, since 2010, the director has won the Directors Guild Award, has gone on to win the Oscar all but one time.
Yeah, so when breaking down Best Director and really Best Picture, if you want to watch kind of both of those videos in conjunction, this one as well as that one, it should be up right now when you're watching this. It's kind of interesting to take those two in conjunction, because when you look at let's look at some stats here, basically. Yeah. Recency bias and history of the Oscars shows us that in recent years, the tendency has tended to split the Best Director and Best Picture awards. They've had more of an attitude of let's share the love. It's happened 5 out of the last 7 years. There's a shot that it happens this year because the Best Director and Best Picture races are some of the most potentially wide open, even though some front runners and some movies have crept a little more to the front of the race. But the big narrative with this race in recent years in particular is Best Director tends to go to the most directing, the flashiest, the technical achievement. I'm thinking about Alejandro Iñárritu winning a couple years ago for Birdman, another single take experiment before Sam Mendes' 1917. I'm thinking about Alejandro Iñárritu again the next year for The Revenant, which is maybe less of a flashy directing and more of a how the heck did he film in these kinds of conditions, in these brutal outdoor conditions. Last year with Alfonso Cuarón for Roma, beautiful film of wide, long shots and sweeping vistas and black and white cinematography, like kind of just using the power of cinematography and the lens to really let us peek into his childhood memories there. He won Best Director for that. And the last 7 or 8 years, really the one that doesn't match up to that narrative is a couple years ago when Guillermo del Toro won Best Director for The Shape of Water over Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk, which in that crop you could argue is the most technically wow of a film. Yeah. So for that reason, I think that this award is kind of Sam Mendes' to take as far as who will win. He has the momentum on his side. He won the DGA, and at the last decade, only once has the person who won the DGA not won the Oscar for Best Director. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, 1917 is a film that is snowballing its way to the Academy Awards.
Definitely.
Talk about
That's a good
the
way of putting
narrative that is building around this film. I mean, out of these movies, it was the one with the latest release, which normally hurts the Academy Award, hurts your chances at winning.
It's a gamble.
Exactly, but the gamble is paying off for them because the momentum is building. I think of this Mendes as well, especially if you look at how the Directors Guild Award went. Plenty of other awards have gone his way and this film's way as well. It's not who I think should win, though. My vote would go to Bong Joon-ho.
Okay.
Because, again, Parasite is an international masterpiece. The way he deftly jumps between genres, we talked a lot about in our international picture film video here. He's just a masterwork of directing there, a little more subtle than what Sam Mendes is doing, but still just a showcase of a guy who's just a master at his craft, putting the work in.
Right, and it definitely when you talk about those two contenders there, you have to talk a little bit about the conversation of and it might be a question that you, the audiences, have at home of what exactly does the best director do, and unless you have a full 20-minute featurette that you can get when the DVD of the movie comes out, you don't really know from a movie-to-movie basis. Some directors, are control freaks. I'm thinking maybe David Fincher. Some directors maybe like to let some of their other collaborators, like their cinematographers or composers or actors, shine, and they're really good with their working with their actors. Some of them do a lot of those things. When I think of 1917, I think of that more as, and again, we can't really know this for sure, but I think of it more as Roger Deakins' his achievement, the cinematographer's achievement. We'll talk about him a little more in the best cinematography video coming later this week as well, I'm sure. But I think of him more as integral to the success of 1917, a movie that I don't think a whole lot of when it comes to the acting or a whole lot of it when it comes to the writing, but the achievement of filming this movie that looks like a single take in a wartime setting, which is, we haven't seen that before. I also think Bong Joon-ho should win for this, is for all the reasons you mentioned, Jackson. I also think about if you're going to talk about an Academy voting body that likes to reward technically proficient, show-offy movies, in a way, I think Parasite is just as technically proficient, if not more so, in 1917, because it's not calling attention to itself. I'm thinking of a couple different scenes where the best word I can think of to describe them is he just pulls it off like clockwork, and you just know that it's the director inherently. That's because of his involvement. He's kind of has the biggest say in how some of those scenes are turning out, and he does it in a way where, as opposed to 1917, it doesn't really call attention to itself. It's not separating itself from the story. It helps lift and support his really kind of intricately crafted story. And he kind of calculates everything. He storyboards everything. He's a bit more of a control freak of a director, more along the lines of maybe like David Fincher is. And I think what he does with Parasite is more of a best director achievement. Yeah,
I mean, one of the things I just learned recently after watching Parasite again for the second time is all of that was constructed on set, Sure. That's not a real house. Those aren't the real streets of South Korea.
Right.
But that all comes from Bong Joon-ho's sketches of how he wants the shots to go, his laying out, his storyboarding of everything that he envisions the film to do. And it's a masterwork of a film, as we've talked about. Just an incredible piece of direction by him.
Yeah.
And I think every bit of this movie seems to come from Bong Joon-ho.
Absolutely.
And the way that you mentioned, Deakins, as we're going to talk a lot about Deakins on the cinematography progress, on the cinematography video, it kind of feels like a 1A, 1B between Mendes and Deakins, like you were saying there.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
If you're taking this movie, you're taking this category on the outrage meter here, you think Mendes will win, you think Joon-ho should win. How outraged are you when Mendes takes home the award?
I think I'll be I'm teetering between a 3 and a 4 on a scale of 1 to 5. Again, it's really kind of what I expect. He has all the momentum. It really is the director, the technical achievement show off. So it really wouldn't wouldn't sway too far from what the Academy has tended to do in recent years. But I also have to think that it kind of also comes down to what happens with Best Picture. Does he take home both of them? Or does the Academy split director and picture again? In that case, my outrage meter may be a little low by that point. But if I'm taking this at face value, 3 or 4, because I'd like them to think a little more about just the flashiest, what the movie that engrosses you the most visually, because there's engrossing you in the technical achievement and thinking and you watching a movie and thinking about how the heck did the director do this, and then there's actually you being engrossed in a movie and thinking about the hit story and what's actually going on inside it. And I think when it comes to that end, Bong Joon-ho does a little bit a better job, even though Sam Mendes did something we really haven't seen before. So I'll give it a 3.
For me on the outrage meter, It doesn't even matter who wins. I'm already at a 5 for the outrage.
Okay.
Nominate more female directors.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Do it.
We got through this whole video. We mentioned Tarantino and Scorsese's names twice.
Yeah.
How crazy is that for an award like this?
It's crazy, and it's crazy. They're two legacy filmmakers that they didn't sneak their way in here. They were cemented locks, in a way. That says as much about the Academy's voting tendencies as anything else. And just like it maybe says as much that it's not a huge shock that any women were nominated. So it is kind of crazy that we haven't mentioned that Martin Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino. Do either of them have a shot for their movies? I really don't think so now in this category.
Not anymore. You think in February when the Irishman trailer played during the Super Bowl, it was, oh my gosh, he's got this in the bag. You see the cast, you see coming to Netflix. It just felt like it was there. And then in June, July, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood comes out, and it's, man, this is Tarantino's to lose. This is a masterpiece from him. But yeah, the narratives progress. I think that's why we're seeing the snowballing effect from 1917. It worked out well in their favor. Yeah.
Narratives progress, narratives evolve, and we will be talking a lot more, I anticipate, in the Best Picture video of this Oscars series of Screen Test Goes to the Oscars, and talking about recency bias and 1917 and its January release date, which separates it from all these other contenders.
Yeah, so be sure to hit subscribe below to check out all our other videos. That's been Best Director here from Screen Test.
Thanks, guys. I'm David Lynch.
I'm Jackson Floyd.
And if you want to read some of our thoughts on some of the Best Picture nominees, I've written reviews on all of them. Check those out at kens5.com/screentest.
And we'll see you next time.